Hi everybody. I wanted to do a second part to conscience because there's so many quotes on this in the books, the Gurdjieff books, the Ouspensky books. I often use the dictionaries that are available. There's various ones. There's a guide and index to Gurdjieff's books. There's a book by Thring, Thring, that's like a dictionary of all the Gurdjieff writings. I often resort to that to help me then find the quotes that I'm using in these. But conscience was such a large subject that I've had to do a two-parter, and I had to put the light on because when I was doing it earlier, it got dark. But this is a very important quote from Views from the Real World, page 247. From the time when man began to live on the earth, from the time of Adam, with the help of God, nature, and all our surroundings, there gradually formed in us an organ, the function of which is conscience. Every man has this organ, and whoever is guided by conscience automatically behaves in accordance with the commandments. Conscience is not a stick with two ends. No stick with two ends here. It is the quite definite realization formed in us through the ages of what is good and what is bad. Unfortunately, this organ is usually covered over with a kind of crust. Only intense suffering or shock pierces the crust, and then conscience speaks. But after a while, a man calms down and the organ becomes covered up once more. A strong shock is needed for this organ to become uncovered automatically. For instance, a man's mother dies. Instinctively, conscience begins to speak to him. To love, to honour, and to cherish one's mother is the duty of every man, but man is seldom a good son. When his mother dies, a man remembers how he had behaved towards her and begins to suffer from the gnawings of conscience. But man is a great swine. He very soon forgets and lives again in the old way, which is what I was saying in the episode before this one, Conscience Part 1, that when we don't follow that conscience in us, it niggles at us and makes us ill, makes us have disease because we're at diseased, we're not at ease with ourselves. Conscience keeps us on the straight path and keeps us living a path of truth and living a life of ease. And not the ease of we sit back and do nothing, but an ease of we can begin to understand how to live in this life and what it is to be a real human being. So from Views from the Real World, a question and answer. Question to Gurdjieff. What is the relation of conscience to the acquisition of I? And Gurdjieff replies, conscience helps only in that it saves time. A man who has conscience is calm. A man who is calm has time which he can use for work. However, conscience serves this purpose only in the beginning. Later, it serves another purpose. Maybe I should have read that. However, conscience serves this purpose only in the beginning. Later, it serves another purpose because conscience has many roles to it, which is why we want to be aware of it and listen to it and become awake to it. You know, and at first it will slowly guide us into what we should be doing. And then hopefully, once we are working on ourselves and working on becoming awake, this is real conscience still, but it becomes even more, not even intense, I've got the wrong word for it really. It starts operating on levels that we just can't think of at the moment because we're too asleep to understand it. So from, what's this from? Actually, I forgot to write down what one this is from. It's not Views from the Real World. Towards Awakening, I think this book was from, this quote. Conscience calls me to be myself. To be myself begins with work on myself. Work on myself is based on the sensation of myself. So that's just one of the pupils that was describing how finding his conscience worked with him. I've got a few quotes from Knott here, C.S. Knott, good old Knott, and his two books. From the time when men first appeared on earth, from the time of Adam, there began to be formed in us, with the help of God, of nature and our surroundings, an organ whose function is conscience. Every man has this organ, and who is ever guided by his conscience lives according to the precept of his inner voice. But man lives according to the whim of subjective conscience, which, like subjective morality, is different everywhere. And when we're not following our conscience, we just get caught up in the role of everyday rat race life that people that aren't on a path are following. So Knott's kind of reiterating what Gurdjieff's already said in these other quotes, but it doesn't hurt to go over them again. For example, a man's mother dies and he begins to hear the voice of conscience. To love, honour and cherish one's mother is the duty of every man, but man is seldom a good son. When his mother dies, he remembers how he behaved towards her and begins to suffer from remorse. Man is also a great swine, and like a swine, he soon forgets. Conscience sinks down again, and he begins to live in his usual automatic way. He who has no conscience cannot be truly moral. And that's true. You know, if you've got no conscience, you just do what you want because you don't care. And, you know, morality is about caring. Having morals is about, you know, caring, being aware of your conscience and listening to your conscience. But it doesn't just have to be your mother's died. You know, anything happens that makes you suddenly, you know, a good friend dies. You're suddenly living in that way of loving and honouring them, which is how we should be in life all the time with people that are alive and living now. Let's make use of these people now, love and honour everybody. And I know people can be swines, but sometimes when you act like that, like a swine towards them, they'll become a swine back. But if you act with love and honour, then they can act like that back. This one I find quite interesting. If anyone's got any answers to this, though I have a few thoughts, but I wouldn't mind a discussion on this from Knott. One of our tasks is to disinter the submerged Atlantis, the buried objective conscience. So we had that conscience, that objective conscience back when humanity was beginning, and somehow, whether it's to do with Kundabuffa, it submerged down, it sank underneath the waves like Atlantis did. And Atlantis can rise again, so can our objective conscience rise again. We're bringing it up. And Knott continues with this. The story of engulfed Atlantis may be compared with the objective conscience buried deeply in us, swallowed up in personality. Objective conscience is the function of a normal being. It is the representative of God in the essence. Jesus taught the gospel of love. It might have been for our good if we could have understood it, and still can be if we learn to distinguish between the three kinds of love and learn how to practice conscious love. And I've done shows on love, so please look back for them. And when we have disinterred the buried objective conscience, we should have an infallible guide. So we need to bring it back up, raise it from the dead, raise it from the waves. The deleterious effects of mechanical love, which, like everything unconscious, is evil. And these are the words of Farage put in Knott's book. But Knott continues. Gurdjieff says that which furthers the aim of self-perfection, of the acquiring and expansion of being and understanding, is objectively moral. That which contracts being and hinders understanding, the unconscious self-imposed limitations and inhibitions, the mind-forged manacles, that which wastes precious energy, all this is objectively immoral. The mind-forged manacles is something William Blake talks about, of how we get caught up in, in our personalities, what Gurdjieff say. And, you know, I highly recommend William Blake as well. William Blake's a fantastic poet and artist and prophet of visionary wonders back in the 1800s. Some people thought he was a bit mad, but that's probably because everybody else was asleep and couldn't see that he could see things properly. He could see things for real. You know, obviously he didn't have Gurdjieff work to learn from because he was before Gurdjieff's time, but he saw things differently to how everybody else sees things. So I do highly recommend William Blake. In fact, I've got shows on my channel of William Blake. You know, if you go back through my videos, you'll find some William Blake poems, William Blake writings, and some little talks with William Blake, and a great show on where I'm talking with Henry Elliott, no relation, all about William Blake and his art. Love William Blake. So this is from John Godolphin Bennett. We are already seeing the tragic consequences of the religion of self-interest. Gurdjieff says that it is necessary now for man to begin to see things as they really are. We have in us an instrument that enables us to see the truth, not indirectly through what other people have taught us, but by a direct perception. The instrument of this direct perception he calls by the ancient name of conscience. So conscience is our instrument that helps us to go forward. So help yourselves in developing your conscience. Read the Gurdjieff writings, read the Ouspensky writings, read Bennett's writings, and look up William Blake and his art. And remember that God is that spark in us that is our conscience.